Hey folks, Sean from Sky's the Limit Adventures with you here today, and in this video we're going to go over the assembly of Bar Jimmy. Before we get started, I wanted to just say a few things. The first is a disclaimer about the complexity of this. If you're going the full distance on this project, you're looking at right around 20K pieces. So for people on council or people who are dealing with performance issues already in this game, this may not be the best build for you in your parks. That being said, there is probably a way to make this serviceable for you in some way, and just with two blueprints being the Bar Jimmy exterior and Bar Jimmy interior part 1, that sits around 8K blueprints, so you still could probably make it work. Second thing I wanted to do is just quick thank yous. The first being to Tagi3D for his invisible pathing method tutorials. Really helped my putting green sort of reach its full potential. And then the second thank you would be to Gatanera and his food blueprints, to which I'm using the ketchup, mustard, and mayonnaise bottles. Thank you both. Very helpful. Okay, folks, starting with a blank canvas here. First thing I'm going to recommend you doing is just wherever you want to put this down, try to get it as flat as possible on the ground. It's going to help you later in the assembly of all this. Everything's pretty flat here already, so shouldn't be an issue. We're going to make sure we're on our blueprint tab, which we are. We're going to type in Bar Jimmy. Now, if you want to go the full distance on this, you're going to need 6 blueprints. You're going to need Bar Jimmy Swing Suites, Bar Jimmy Stage, Bar Jimmy Outdoor Bar, Bar Jimmy Interior Part 1, Interior Part 2, and Bar Jimmy Exterior. For people who are dealing with complexity issues or want to keep the piece count a little lower, I would still recommend just doing the exterior and the part 1. You can still kind of get away with the build with those 2 blueprints. So just in case that is you, we're going to start with Bar Jimmy Exterior here. And it's going to kick you to this Utility Powers tab. Just get rid of that real quick. Hit X to make sure you're on Advanced Move. For folks who need to rotate this to a different position, I recommend doing angle snap on it. That way the signs will still sort of match as you rotate, and just keep track of how much you are rotating that. If you do have to freehand it, it's going to make things a little more difficult, but not impossible. So get back to our Advanced Move tab here, and we're just going to take that sign and get it right below the ground. And letters 2. Okay, it's going to kick you over to that Powers tab again. You can just close out of that. It is already attached, so you shouldn't need to worry about that. A couple quick things on the exterior here. Roof's not the cleanest, so folks who are doing like roller coasters, big rides around this, you may want to clean this up a bit. It's not the greatest sight line. I may do an update later just to make sure it gets a little more polished. But for me, I don't expect to have anything above the sight line, so it's not really an issue. But just to keep it on your mind there. Second thing I'll tell you about is these stairs. One of the weird quirks that I've ran into at this build is every time I place this exterior blueprint down, the stairs pathing always seems to end up in a different place. So I have these stairs grouped, just advance move them, and usually it's a pretty quick just adjustment here to get those in a position where they're covering those ugly steps. All right, everything else looks pretty good. I usually just do a once around to make sure, again, nothing's out of place. It looks pretty good. So we're going to move on to our interior, and you're going to see this interior blueprint right here. Sign, that's what we're trying to match up. So best thing to do with these, if you have a lot of stuff in your park already, we'll start with part 1. Just get it out in the open and in a place that's easy to select it all. Otherwise, frame rate can be an issue if you've got a big park going already. I'm going to go ahead and build that. Exit out of the blueprint. And a couple things before we move this into place. You're going to see these 2 rocks out here. This one on the right's not meant for really anything except symmetry once everything is assembled. So if you don't need it or it's in the way, go ahead and delete it. This one on the left, however, is hiding these rotational platforms. And the reason that is because we have a sequence behind the bar here with our Sam Adams cherry wheat where if you go behind, once it's all assembled, you can pour yourself a beer. With the rotational ones, if you move this up or down from the rotational platforms, it does increase the radius and the movement is not correct. So that's why we have to keep it lateral to those rotational platforms. If this is in your way, just go ahead and delete it. Take those out. And then what you can do, so there's this weird tap sort of still sitting there, just go and take one of your other taps. This can be a little difficult sometimes since there's a lot of pieces here. And we can just go ahead and duplicate that and move it into position. And there you go. You won't have the sequence, obviously, but it'll still look normal from the aesthetic perspective. But for now, we're going to keep it in there and keep those rocks in place just so that you can see the effect at the end. Whoops, sorry. All right, we're going to go ahead and multi-select this, and we're going to move it into place. So I'm just going to try to get it into a place where I think is pretty close before I go down into that building, because it gets a little tight in there. So that's pretty close, and we're just going to move it down. And I'm trying to get the words on the same sort of plane here. That can be a little tough with these bigger blueprints, just because there's a lot going on. But hey, we did it, so that's great. And this just gives us an easier way to match the actual prints. Whoops, sorry about that. That looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead and try that. And again, we're just going to take a quick glance around, making sure most things got into place. If something didn't sort of end up in the right spot, all these signs and a lot of these things are grouped so that you can easily move them if that is the case. Quick thing about the audio here. I do have the sequencer out just in case you need to change the timing on it at all. But this is meant for your in-bar sound system. It's connected to the speakers already there's 4 of them around the bar. You'll see them highlighted there. So you can obviously place your own tracks if you want them, and change the timing on each of them if you need to. And then when you're done with that, this just goes straight back into there. And then when you walk up to it in the first-person camera, you can go ahead and just click your left mouse button or your main action on your controller, and it'll start your system, start your playlist. All right, moving on to the second interior blueprint. Same thing, getting it out in the open usually helps with frame rate, so we're going to do that. Place it down. This is your venting systems, your flooring, some of the chairs, the bay doors, and a couple other just smaller pieces there. Move that into place. Same thing as the first interior. Get it kind of close before we go inside. And get it to a place where we can try to match up the words. Oof. Yeah. That looks pretty close to me. Maybe just a touch more left. Yeah, there we go. That's looking good. Once again, just a quick once over to make sure everything got into the right spot. Everything's looking good there. Looks like we got a good start to this. Yep, I'm pretty happy with that. Do a quick once over upstairs. Looks like the bay doors are in the right place and the seating got all taken care of. So, all right, we're going to move on to our back porch or our back patio. Now, we have kind of 2 options here. So you're going to see 4 signs here. Kind of the one with the full package are going to be 3 blueprints. You're going to see match swing suite sign here, match stage sign here, match outdoor bar sign here. So that's kind of one option, and then this match outdoor bar waterfront option here sign, that's going to be sort of your second option that I have built into this package. For now, we're going to focus on sort of the one with all the bells and whistles, which are these 3 signs right here. And we are going to move from right to left as we do this. You can do it left to right, but I have ran into some more complications when you get to the stage doing that than when you move right to left. So let's go ahead and get our first blueprint ready, which is our Bar Jimmy outdoor bar. You may see that it's trying to snap into place here. Don't let it do that. Yep, so like that, that's going to cause it to rotate to a different position. So just get it away from that and hit advance move, your X button. At least that's my keybind for it. And again, trying to get those words on the same plane is going to help a lot here as we match it up. And that's pretty close. We're going to try that. And that looks pretty good. There's this weird pathing thing, but usually when I place the stage, that'll disappear since there is a little bit of overlap. And yeah, everything else looks good about this. So we're going to go ahead and move on. Bar Jimmy stage now. This usually snaps into place. I have had some issues with this because it's natural pathing on the main grass area, but let's just see if it works for us. And it worked right away. We like to see that. If it doesn't work for you that way, there is a couple things you can try before basically having to start over, which I know is not ideal. You can just try flattening foundation again. Sometimes that does help. Other times, saving where you are in the assembly and then loading back into the park will work too. And if neither of those works, the only thing that I found that you have to do is just sort of restart on your assembly, at least on the back porch section. It's just a weird quirk, again, of the game that it will do that sometimes. But this worked, so we're going to move on. Moving on to our Bar Jimmy swing suites. All right, this one's a little tougher to get into place because it's a bigger surface area of blueprint. So again, hitting advanced move on this one right away is important. If you try to place this out here and then re-grab it, this advanced pathing method here, where it's basically an invisible path, is not going to let you place it a second time. So we have to go straight to advanced move and get it into place. It's not one of those ones that we are able to sort of place and then reposition. So let's try to get this as close as possible. Yeah, accesses are not great on this one. Just heads up, might be a little tougher to match this up, but looks like we're doing all right. Yeah, I'm going to try that. I think that's pretty close. All right, yep, that did work indeed. And looks like it's about the right height. And really what we're looking for is that this pathing corner connected with our stage area. So really what we want to make sure is that this full perimeter on the concrete doesn't have any of these stumps that would come with your natural pathing. There's some that are not preventable if you're not attaching to that section. But in this case, we got them all. So this looks great. Now, before you do anything else, any other sort of action in this is really important for these invisible paths. You have to go and take your terrain tool, push, and I'm going to go 60, let's do 60%, and probably like 23 feet. Seems good. And in one succinct move, we have to just wipe away this path. This is if you want that water vibe that you have seen maybe in some of the other videos and things I've shown you. Now you're just trying to get an area around this out and excavated so that none of that is interfered with as you fully landscape this area, which will be sort of the last thing I show in this video, which it looks like we did. We got it far enough away from that path where we can first check the water level real quick and make sure it's in a place that we like it. See if it's going to let me do that. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's a little low, but you know, kind of beggars can't be choosers with some of the water level stuff here. So this looks good. The siding goes far enough down where I think it's covered pretty well. Okay, so this is our second option for that back patio. This one's pretty simple. I've taken the liberty of just getting the exterior and the two interior blueprints down, and then I've made just a small little lake back here so you can see the effects of the water once it's done. We're going to go ahead and just get to our blueprint section, and we're looking for Bar Jimmy Outdoor Bar Water option. So this guy right here, Bar Jimmy Outdoor Bar Waterfront. And we're looking for this back sign, and we're just going to match it up real quick. Oh man, it's decided to start raining for us. Let's see here. There we go. And then obviously when you're done assembling all of this, the signs can just get deleted. I think most of them are grouped, so they should be easy to just get rid of. Oh, I guess this one wasn't. Everything else, though, should be in good shape. All right, there it is. Next, we're going to talk about just doing the terraforming for that putting green. All right, we're picking up where we left off on the landscaping of this putting green. So we have some terraforming we need to do to get this to sort of reach its full potential. And the first thing I'm going to do is just get this sort of creek outline finished. There's a couple other things that I put in here that wouldn't be necessary if you do want to do the extra terraforming. I put this wooden fence around the perimeter just so that if you want to keep it right where it is in sort of this state, then you do have sort of this blocking that backstage sight line. But for the purpose of what I'm doing and like exactly how I wanted it landscaped and terraformed, I'm going to get this fence out of there because it's going to be right where the creeks sort of runs. So we're going to get rid of it. Probably should have been grouped. My apologies for not having it that way. It's still not too bad to deal with. Okay, so I'm going to get to our terrain tool. And really what we're doing is we're just pushing a lot of this out of the way. And let's see, let's get it to a smaller surface. There we go. And probably need, nope, not 3 feet small. Like 13 or 16. Yeah, that's good. And we're going to want to just get these rocks, and right where that splash sort of comes into effect is what we want to have sort of the land pulled back to. You'll see this tree is kind of right where we want the land to be, meeting at the shoreline and sort of running along the border of the stage here. That looks pretty good to start. And then again, we're just going to take that flattened terrain and we're just going to sort of get that outline of that creek done. And I'm just taking away more land than probably is needed at this point, but that's sort of usually how I do. Go a little extreme and then sort of adjust as you keep going. So that looks pretty good to start. Get this tree out of the way. Yeah, I think I feel pretty good about that. So we're just gonna touch up the edges here. Let's see, pull this land up a bit so that it meets at the brick. And I'm going to do that all the way around the building. You can see that blue outline from some of the trim work on top of the brick. We just want to pull that up so that you can't see it. And really just pull it up to these door frames if you can. There we go. And then I'm going to add some land to over here, probably with the flattened terrain tool, because this is where our sand bunker is going to go, which kind of gives it that more golf look to it. Just kind of looking for like almost like a kidney shape from the edge of this green all the way around here. And that's kind of what we have right now, so we should be good. I'm going to also just pull this land right up to the top of this green as much as I can without it bleeding over the top, just so that the edge looks a little more defined and not as sort of drastic if you were to walk off that green. Yeah, that looks pretty good. It looks like we went a little too far on that on this side. That's good to start with. Okay, so I'm just going to check the water level here, see where we are. Yeah, that looks like it's a pretty good shape. Yeah, that's not bad for where we are. I'm going to undo that, though, because we still got some touching up to do. And I also noticed that this land could be pulled up so that you can't see that concrete behind the stage. I'll pull it just like that. That looks like it's good. This tree also needs to be in the ground. And I'm just going to fortify this shoreline a little more and then maybe smooth it out just so that it's a little more natural. I think that's pretty good. Same thing with these. Just smoothing them out a bit so that you don't have those really sharp edges on the terrain. All right, let's check the water with that one more time to see where we're at. Make sure we didn't lose any of our water line here. Yeah, that's right where we want to be, I would say. Very close anyways, and we can touch it up even more as we go along. But for now, we're going to move on to this sort of second part of this rolling creek, which is this little puddle, or sort of this little pool of water that meets underneath these rocks. This one's a little tricky. You just got to make sure you have the thinnest amount of land that crosses where this rock and all those water effects meet. So first things first, we're just going to sort of take our size down to as little as possible. Intensity can stay up a little bit because really all we're doing is just digging out a small hole so that you can see 2 levels of water. And that really gives us the perspective that sort of there is this rolling creek that we have. Sometimes it helps to have the water here, sometimes it doesn't. At least to start, I think I'll keep it there, but then I'll probably go back and delete it just so that I can thin out this piece of land even further. So that looks pretty good. We're also going to fortify the land behind this so that it fully rises to the top of these rocks. So let's see here. So kind of just like getting it to meet at the top of these is nice, and it definitely helps with the full sight line of what this creek will become. And if you're worried about the grass, that can always be just texturized to fit a little more with the rocky nature of this towards the end. So just really just looking for the shape at this point. Keep pushing. You know, again, this is where it's a little back and forth and nitpicky, but just trying to get it to look as good as possible here. And I'm going to check that water line, see where it's given us. This is probably the one we want right here. And you'll see these edges, that's basically telling you where it's not going to work. So we need to improve sort of where the land meets at all that. So let's keep going. And at this point, I am going to take out that other water just so that it doesn't affect the terrain tool at all. So pull this up. See, on this edge, we probably want it to come really far. Yep, that's better. Probably go a little higher in the intensity here. There we go. That's looking good. All right. Oh, nope. Sorry about that, folks. Let's push it in a little more. Trying to find the lowest point here, see if it lets me just flatten to... Nope, it's not going to let me. So we'll just keep sort of using the push and pull tools and checking the water level just to see where it lets us do this. And that's probably as good as we can get. The next line up is going to be too drastic, so we're going to have to settle for this. In the park save, you're going to see it does look a little more natural. The line is probably the water lines are probably a little more just in better places. So, but for this, I think it's fine just to show you sort of the effects that you can create. Let's see, push this in. So I'm just going to keep pushing, and that's going to sort of soften up those edges even more. And trying to get it as centered as possible so you're not eroding the top where the water line sort of uses for the benchmark. Like that's probably already going to be too much. Let's check. Yep. Just took it a little too much there. Pretty good. Let's see. I'm going to try to just pull this a little further out and then, yeah, like we're going to do this and then take the push tool and sort of erode more of the middle. So we're getting that land as close to that thin strip of land as close to those special water effects as possible. And you'll see, hopefully once we have this dialed in, it's going to give you the effect you want. I'll keep going on the right here. Let's see. Yeah, getting closer. So I'm going to see how much it lets me push this away now with the water in there. Not much. So this is where, again, it gets very back and forth. And just a lot of trial and error here. Let's see, push this. That's getting there. You can see there's still some thin pieces of land, but I'm tempted to just not mess with that at this point because this is a pretty close to what we want. And these green pieces, really easy to just take those out and just rock them over. And they sort of start blending in with the other rocks that you have in place, especially once the water's running. So let's check, get the bottom water in there and see if that's what we want. Yeah, very close, very close. And I'm just for the sake of time, we're going to leave it right like that. But you kind of get the effect that we're creating. Again, in the park save, these water levels are at a more reasonable place. Like the boiling over of the water on the top level is just, I think, in a much better spot. You can always lower these, lower this maybe just a little bit to get that more sort of running water effect. But for this, I think it's fine. As long as you can see that there's two pools of water there, that's, I think, what becomes the effective part of these rolling streams. So we're going to just settle on that for now and move to our sand bunker. This one's a little more easy, so what we're looking to do is just, again, create that kidney shape with that bunker here. So we're going to push in the land. I'm going to go a little higher on intensity. I'll go further down on size. That's probably about right. You can see because there's that water in there, it's going to not let us push back the land as much as we want. So I'll come back to that and just take out the water. Just get to a sort of level here that we think is appropriate for a sand bunker. And I think it's probably, yeah, let's say it's about there. It's probably a little smaller, but this will work just for the effect that we're trying to show you. And we just want it to wrap around towards our retainer wall, and that'll give it sort of that nice bunker-like effect and a fun little shape to add to the golf theming in the area. Let's see. That looks pretty good. I'm going to get this tree out of here. Again, these sort of pieces and the rock in front of it were just more so that if you don't want to go the full distance on some of the landscaping here, there is some scenery pieces for you to work with so that it's not just totally naked when you place down the blueprint. So we're going to take out that water, and we're going to just work on this shoreline right here real quick. Let's just get a good smooth on that, and actually we're going to work this further towards the creek, but we don't want too far. We still want this to be sort of a strip of grass if we can, as much as it's naturally possible. All right, I think I like that shape. I think it's good. We do need to raise this ground back up since we've took a little out. And we want that to sort of, again, be another strip of grass that sort of blends in with the fringe of the putting green. And we can even pull it up probably a bit more than that. More intensity here. There we go. That looks great. That's what we're looking for right there. Just a little more in this section. There we go. That's it. All right, so check that water level one more time, see how it runs up against that shoreline. Yeah, I think that's pretty close to the effect we have. And I'm happy with that at the moment, at least. So we're going to work on our coloring of the terrain here. First thing we're going to do is just sandblast the inside of the bunker, and then we'll come back and we'll just redo the rims so that you get sort of the grassy tops. All right, I think that's at a good place. And then again, lowering intensity and size. I'm just going to do the top of the green just so that the rim sort of isolates the two textures. Same thing over here. And that's starting to take shape. I think I like that. It probably could be a little deeper, and I think it is just a tad bit deeper in the final park save, but this is pretty good just to show you the effect of what we're going for here. And it's also probably a little big, but that's all right. Good for sort of doing this in a quick manner. We got to smooth out these. I think that's probably the best, so we don't have those, again, really sharp edges to the green. And this is a lot of back and forth, making sure your textures stay where you want them to as you smooth out the rims. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Just with all of this terrain stuff, I mean, you can spend a lot of time on it, and I'm a firm believer that the more you do spend on this, the better the effects are, the more you get away with from a scenery perspective. It just really lends itself to the whole landscaping. So this is really good. I like where the creek is. I think I like where the shoreline is, although it probably could be a little smoother there. So first part of this, definitely happy with the sort of first go at it. Last sort of big thing to do here is to just raise this entire area. This is more of a sightline thing for me. I like to have sort of a natural backdrop to a creation like this, so that these trees are one way to sort of block out the background, but so is just raising up that land to make sure that you don't have sight lines sort of going everywhere. So let's just, again, take our terrain tool. And sort of the best way to do this, I think, is just to see this planter level and get some piece of land, just a section of land up where it meets the top of that. Go a little higher intensity here. And so right about right there. That's probably a little tall. You can go a little shorter than that. And then just take your flattened foundation and just get a section of it really carved out on top. And then once you have sort of where you want that land to meet, just increase your intensity, increase your size, and you're probably going to have some bleed into the bottom here if you do this, but this way it's a little quicker, and then you can come back and fix that next part. Yeah, see how it's starting to bleed? That's okay. That's actually a pretty easy fix once we're sort of done raising up the land all. And I'm even going to go as far as to do it behind this stage, just so that, again, since you can see right through that stage, this helps with your sight lines. And you'll see it's starting to bleed back there. Again, pretty easy fix once we sort of get the land where we want it to be. All right, I think that's a pretty good spot to start. So first things first, I'm just gonna reduce intensity, reduce size, and there should be land underneath that putting green for now you to just peel back all of that just came through the retaining wall. Just like that, so that we keep our foliage sort of intact and in view. And that looks pretty good. And it looks like we still have, for the most part, this meeting our planters. I'm just going to touch that up real quick, actually, though, because it's not... We do want these edges to meet the ground, if possible. Just, yep, kind of like that. And this way, once we go to color the textures for the ground, it's going to blend into these planters a lot better, because it's nice and succinct and sort of runs into one another. And then we're going to do this with the stage as well. Just peel back that land, make sure it's only concrete shown on the one side. Perfect. Everything else looks good on that. Okay, so now we're in a pretty good spot. We're just going to sort of what I like to just blend textures at this point with the sort of different options they give you on the painting tool. I usually start just sandblasting it all as like a good base. And I don't want to go too intense. I just want it to have sort of a nice yellow undertone. And sort of do that all the way across where you see the trees placed. That's pretty good. I think I like that. I'm also going to do it a little bit on these shorelines. Just sandy and muddy shorelines really sort of help make it look a little more natural. So, and it doesn't need to be a lot. Like, I'm already thinking that this left side looks pretty good. It's got maybe a little more rocky texture than I'd want, but that's not in a bad spot, really. And this is really rocky, I think, because we have such a sharp edge leading into the shore. Yeah, liking that a lot better. All right, onto our soil. And this one I'm going to blast a little harder so that it gives it more of that forest floor look. Sorry, just noticing some trees still sort of in the air there. My apologies if that affects you in this build. Let's see here. Looks like everything else is pretty far in the ground. Okay. So soil, a little heavier, like I said, even a little heavier than that. And especially around the planters, we definitely want this to be more of a muddy sort of feel to it. It's not going to get the exact texture overlay that you want against those planters, but from the first person's perspective, it's going to be fine. Really liking how that's starting to look there. That nice forest floor look. Then I'm just going to go and take my short grass and I'm just going to bleed it in a little bit so that you still get that green pop on the ground. It doesn't have to be a lot, really just as subtle as you can. And maybe even more so around some of these rims so that the greenery effect still kind of is where you want it to be. And I'm pretty happy with that. Now, if it was me, this would probably be something I'm spending a good another hour just getting exactly right. But I personally think that this is also very acceptable if you're just not one to say, I want to spend that much time on it. The land is where it needs to be. The sight lines are pretty clean. This rock is floating. Let's fix that. But other than that, this is in a really good place. Right after the video ends, you're going to see just a picture of sort of what the final product would look if I had spent another hour on this, and really just tuning in the landscape to exactly how I want it to be from the first person perspective. So with that, I'm going to end this video. And if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out to me through either the YouTube comments here or Sky's the Limit on Discord. You can find me in Channel 5 or the Planet Coaster Discord servers, or you can just DM me with my username. Thanks so much, everybody, and I hope you enjoy Bar Jimmy.